Hi everyone. Okay, we are live. We have video. Finally, take two. Um, Hi, SOFO officers. My name's Sarah. I'm one of the SOFO student supervisors. Welcome to our third this quarter Google Hangout. This one is called SOFO Solutions Transaction Demos. I'm basically just going to be running through the major transactions that you would encounter as a SOFO officer and hopefully giving some good tips for how to be most successful. This should be pretty basic stuff, but as always, if you have questions on anything at all, even if it's totally unrelated, feel free to ask questions. I should probably pull up the question app. There it is. Great. So yeah, feel free to just click on ask a question and type it in, and I will go ahead and respond live. And make sure if you're just tuning in, if you want to hear your question answered, make sure to watch live rather than starting back from the beginning. But I think this video will be saved afterwards if you do want to go back and rewatch the whole thing. Great. Okay, so let's get started. First major transaction that you would encounter is a reimbursement, probably the most common, most popular thing we see at the window. This is, of course, when you or someone in your group goes to a store, makes a purchase online, and then we reimburse you or reimburse your group member via a check that comes directly from your SOFO account. So the most important thing with reimbursements is to be really organized when you're collecting receipts. Make sure that people who are making purchases for your group are really, getting back to you in a timely manner and are staying on top of the 85-day deadline so that you, still have the time to turn in your reimbursements to SOFO and get the check made. I would collect receipts and then organize them by the payee. It's just the easiest way to go about doing that. Whatever works for you, maybe, work on a spreadsheet with each individual's name and the number of receipts that you need to reimburse them for, whatever it may be. And then basically you're just going to separate out your receipts, look at them all, make sure that they really meet the transaction deadline or the transaction requirements. So every receipt, needs to be fully itemized. We need to know exactly what you purchased. And its price. We need to see the date on the receipt to make sure it was within the past 85 days. We need some vendor information. We need a vendor name and maybe a phone number, something like that. Your advisor needs to sign every receipt. That's important. And we need to see proof of payment. So we need to make sure that the transaction was actually processed and that the payment went through fully before we can reimburse you. This is tricky for sure. I'm the treasurer of my own group. It's definitely difficult. A lot of times I get order confirmations from people who've purchased things online, and I have to email them back and say, you know what, I really need proof of payment still. I need a credit card statement from you, something like that. So yeah, just make sure you're on top of that. Maybe keep your own SOFO folder with all of your receipts organized by payee. That's probably the most useful thing to do. Some people write the payee's name on each receipt, so they make sure to keep everyone's receipts, separate and organized in that way. So maybe do that. And then just keep in mind that any receipts that you have for an individual that total less than $30 per person will need to be processed as petty cash, which is really easy. All you need to do is fill out a petty cash form at the window, and you can actually tape your receipts directly to that form rather than on a blank sheet of paper. And then you'll just turn that in with the voucher, and we will look it over and sign it, and then you'll actually just walk it right next door to the cashier's office, and they will give you cash. So that's pretty neat. You don't have to wait for a check or anything like that. So definitely, definitely a good option. Again, that's any reimbursement to an individual that's under $30. Yeah, so basically with a reimbursement in general, you're going to turn in your voucher, marked as a reimbursement, write the name of the individual you're reimbursing, make sure you fill out the top, write account name, number, president and treasurer's signature, and then make sure you're writing a good description of why exactly you're reimbursing this person, what the event was for example. And then at the bottom there's a spot for an address. Probably for reimbursement you wouldn't necessarily need to use the address spot if it's someone in your group you're going to be seeing pretty frequently. But maybe if it's the end of the quarter and people are going home for break or something like that, it might be a good idea to just put someone's home address on there, and we can just mail it to them, and they could get it over the summer, or over spring break, or winter, anything like that. Yeah, so probably the main key point for reimbursements is to remember the 85-day deadline and really try to get things done as soon as you can. Try to be respectful to the people in your group. Make sure that you're reimbursing people as soon as you possibly can, so that no one is waiting months and months or even weeks to get reimbursed. Cool. Okay, moving right along onto payments. Payments are amazing and fantastic and really, really easy. I try to tell people to do payments whenever they possibly can. Really, the most important thing about payments is good communication with vendors. So rather than good communication with people in your group, you're going to be communicating directly with the company. And again, payments are used whenever you're making an order, whenever you're, you have an agreement with a company for, tangible goods, anything like that, like a big T-shirt order for your group, for example, would be a great way to use a payment. And for a payment, you'll just need to get an invoice from the company, which is usually really, really simple. People don't necessarily think to get invoices, but they're really the best way to go about doing something. And all you need to do is get that invoice, make sure that it has the itemized list of what you're purchasing, like a grand total. Make sure it says invoice so that we know that it's a finalized amount. And again, have your advisor sign it, as always. And then you'll just turn that in with your voucher. I'm going to do this every time. Marked as a payment. So here for the payee, rather than a student in your group, it's going to be a company, let's say Underground Printing. Okay, so you would put them their name here, and then in this case, maybe for a payment you would want to use an address, especially if it's like an out-of-town vendor or like a hotel or something like that that's out of state. You would definitely be able to mail that for you. Again, expense for, you want to make sure you're describing why you're making the payment, and then, as always, account info and signatures up here. Cool. So with payments, yeah, I mean, it's really just important to plan ahead for sure. I think sometimes people don't plan ahead and they don't necessarily think that they'll be able to get an invoice from a vendor, and then they just end up fronting the money themselves. I don't really love to see that. I'd much rather that you guys could pay the company directly, because this way no one in your group has to front money themselves, and you can actually just we'll cut the check for you directly from your account. So that's really a much better option, I think, for your group. Payments tend to go through SOFO really, really quickly, really easily. You don't have to worry about proof of payment because you haven't paid for anything yet. So yeah, definitely, I like to tell people to really brainstorm ways to use invoices whenever you can. Like I said, hotels, flights, people use invoices for any kind of order, really. Yeah, I mean, it's it's not going to work at like Jewel. Like, you can't really get an invoice for groceries, but anytime you're placing an order with a company, they can definitely set you up with an invoice. And just think about it as, rather than you paying for it, SOFO can pay it for you, and it'll just come straight from your account and be super easy. So that's good. Definitely keep in touch with the vendor that you're paying and make sure that they receive the check, especially if you have us mail it out for you. If you write an address on the bottom, make sure that you're really, staying on top of that and making sure that your sort of your liability with the company has been met by paying them. And then, of course, for a contractual payment, I won't get too detailed about contracts, but just, obviously make sure if you are paying for a service, never use your own money, never pay out of pocket, never let your group members pay out of pocket for any kind of service. So services include, obviously, speakers, performers, catering, any kind of event generally, will have services attached to it. Rentals are services, in fact. Anytime you have an agreement with a company and there are like terms and conditions involved, you never want to spend your own money. If you're unsure, don't, always be on the cautious side, I would say, and communicate really well with your advisor and make sure that, you're spending money appropriately. So we, obviously, the university wants to make sure that students are protected, and so we want to make sure that you guys are never held liable if anything goes wrong with a contract. So obviously any contract will need to be signed by a Northwestern University representative, such as Natalie Follett. Again, with contracts, just make sure that you're really staying on top of those deadlines, really getting started early. Getting Natalie's signature can take a couple weeks, depending on how busy she is and how complicated the contract itself is. So really make sure that you're allowing enough time for that. That's pretty much it. So with contracts, you would just have your voucher rather than a voucher with an invoice. You'd have a voucher with a contract. And the contract, of course, will need to be signed by Natalie, as I mentioned, and then also by the company that you're contracting with, or the individual speaker, performer, whoever it may be. If you are paying an individual rather than a company, we will need a W-9 form on file for them as well. So make sure that you're, staying on top of that. Once we have one W-9 form on file for someone, we'll just keep it on file. They won't need to do it ever again. So if you're paying one person multiple times, then that's fine. But yeah, we definitely need that for tax purposes, because any check that we give them will count as their personal income. So we do need a W-9 form. And all of those forms are available on our website, along with a sort of standard contract. Sometimes companies will have their own contracts already made up, and sometimes, if you're just hiring a speaker, for example, then you might just want a really simple contract, and that's available on our website. So yeah, with payments in general, just remember invoices are super, super easy, really easy to get, just involves a little bit of communication with the vendor, a little bit of extra planning, but in the long run it's going to save you guys money, save you guys time. You won't have to wait on those reimbursements, and no one in your group will have to ever spend their own money. So that's good news. And then contracts, obviously just make sure that you're planning ahead and, communicating with your advisor as well as with the company. And, really make sure that you start the process early because of the time it takes to get that university signature. Okay, great. Moving right along to check advances. Check advances are really, really cool. They are a great way for you to take out money from your SOFO account and then use that money towards a purchase. So, I was saying like invoices you can get for a lot of different things, but they're not really going to work if you're going to Jewel and spending like $300. That would be a great way to use a check advance, however. So I would say really anytime you can't get an invoice and you're going to be spending a lot of money, like over $100, I would say get a check advance. When you request a check advance, it's super easy. All you need to do is submit a voucher, literally just a voucher, and you just mark it as a check advance. And what you're going to do is you're actually going to write yourself as the payee, you or your president. So treasurer, president. For the amount, it can be up to $500, and then as long as you are not a res hall, you can have as many out at a time as you'd like. So that's really cool. Obviously only as much money as you have in your account, but if you have $10,000, you can take out, that's a lot, but you can take out a lot of money, basically. Give us an idea what you're spending on, hopefully, on the expense for line. And yeah, we will literally just cut a check directly to you. Your advisor will have to sign the voucher when you request the check advance. That's important. Since the voucher is the only thing that you're submitting to us, we do need to make sure that your advisor is approving that expenditure from your account. So make sure you get that. But yeah, we'll go ahead and print a check for you. You can take the check and you can deposit it into your bank account. You can cash it if you'd like. You can distribute it among your group. You don't necessarily have to be in charge of all that money yourself. If you have a few different people who want to go to different stores, that's actually a really good idea, I would say, to divide and conquer. Really make sure you're staying organized in terms of receipts. That's like the #1 takeaway for a check advance. You don't want to lose a receipt. I mean, ever, but certainly not with a check advance, because we will need those for the check advance reconciliation when you eventually are finished spending money and you come back and check in with us. So yeah, like I said, you can distribute the money among your group, make sure everyone is collecting receipts as they go, and then within 30 days, we need you guys to actually come back and check in with us and show us your receipts and basically do a reconciliation. And what you'll do if I take out a check advance for $500 and I only spend $400, for example, I would take any excess money that I have and I would deposit it over at the cashier's office, which is right next door. Take the deposit slip from the cashier's office and bring it back to SOFO, and we need to make sure that your receipts plus the deposit slip add up to the total amount of the check advance. So that's really all you need to do there. If you did end up spending some of your own money, if you went a little bit over the amount of the check advance, that's fine too. We'll just cut you a reimbursement check. I would suggest that you take out more money than you think you'll need, because that way it's a lot easier to just deposit the extra at the cashier's office rather than waiting for that reimbursement. So that's what I would suggest. But yeah, check advances are fantastic. I don't think enough people take advantage of them. The only major takeaway is to really keep track of your receipts, I would say. Especially if you're dividing money, among your group, which is totally fine. You just want to make sure that people are staying organized, especially because of the 30-day limit. So you have 30 days from the date on the original check in your name to make sure that you come back to us and check in and reconcile. It's a 30-day limit because basically we're sort of fronting a lot of money to you potentially, and we kind of just ask that you get back to us in a slightly faster time frame to let us know how you're spending it all. But it is a really cool, I think, service that we provide. So definitely take advantage of check advances, and anytime that you're spending a lot of money in a pretty quick time frame, and it's not for an order and it's not something you can get an invoice for, definitely request a check advance. Okay, cool. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we're doing great. Okay, transfers. Transfers are really, really easy. Just like a check advance request, the only thing that you need for a transfer is a voucher. You would just mark it as a transfer. Don't worry about that JE number. That's just for our records. Transfers are basically used for three things: either to move money around your account, to move money between SOFO accounts, and to pay a rush fee to SOFO. So let's see, if you're moving money around your account, maybe you have, like the big theater groups have like a ton of different line items, right? And each one is a different production. But I would say like an ASG recognized group, for example, like my group, we have an OO and then an O2. If I ever want to move money around between those two lines, I would just use a transfer. And what I would do is write the account number on top that the money is coming out of, and then on the payee line, I would just write So if I want to move money from my O2 to my OO, for example, I would write 2002 00002 at the top, and then 2002 00000, one of those on the payee line. So that's really easy. And again, since you're only turning in the voucher, we do need to see your advisor's signature on there, so make sure your advisor is signing the voucher itself. But yeah, it's a really easy way to move money around your account. Important thing to remember, if you are ASG recognized and you do want to move money from an O2, for example, like any ASG funded line, you do need to get your AE or GE signature on the voucher itself. So that's important to remember. Another easy thing to do is to move money between SOFO accounts. So yeah, I mean, this can happen for a lot of different reasons. Basically, if you need to pay a group for anything, like maybe like the mariachi band did a performance for you and you want to pay them for it, that would be awesome. You can just, really easily, like I said, fill out transfer on the pay line. You can just actually ask us at the window. You can write mariachi band, or you can say, hey, what's their account number? And we'll go ahead and fill that out for you because we have all of that information. And then again, just the amount and some description of maybe why you're giving them that money. And that's really easy to do as long as your advisor signs the transfer voucher. Very easy to move money between group accounts, so that's cool. And then finally, transfers can be used to pay rush fees. So I'll actually talk about this in a second, but we do offer the service of rushing checks for you guys if you're just really pressed for time, if you need a check within 24 hours or even the same business day. We definitely have that option for you guys. If it's not, we get it, like you have deadlines sometimes. There's a small fee, so for a next day rush, it's a $15 fee to SOFO, and for a same day rush, it's a $20 fee. So in that case, what you would do is you would again mark the voucher as a transfer, and on the pay line, you would just write SOFO. All your information at the top, as always, and then you can just say on the expense for line, like paying the rush fee, and we'll make sure that that information is complete. Again, rush fees too will need your advisor signature on them, so that's really important to remember if you're rushing a check. A lot of people forget about that you can't just submit that voucher. You actually need to get your advisor to sign off on it. So yeah, so those are the three sort of ways that you would use transfers. Generally really, really simple. Only paperwork involved is the voucher itself, and the really important takeaway is just to make sure that your advisor always signs the voucher. Cool. Okay. Yeah, last thing. So in case you're wondering what SOFO does when you submit paperwork, basically every check is ready within 2 to 3 business days. So whether it's a reimbursement check for someone in your group, or it's a payment check directly to a company, or it's a check advance with your name on it, all of those checks will be ready, even if it's a contractual payment, I should add, in 2 to 3 business days. And basically what happens in that time is the original attendant looks over your paperwork at the window, and then a supervisor double checks everything. So then we look over the paperwork, or our SOFO assistant Carolyn looks over the paperwork to make sure that everything is totally good to go, and then an attendant will actually physically make the check using our accounting software, print the checks, and then again a supervisor will look over all of those checks and make sure that they're completely accurate, completely good to go, everything's spelled correctly, and we just want to make sure that you guys are receiving the exact check that you requested. So that's sort of what happens on our end in those 2 to 3 business days. Everything, like I said, goes through a sort of double review process. So it's very really try to make sure that everything is completely accurate and good to go. And then the last thing would just be rushing checks, which I did briefly talk about with transfers. Basically, if you guys are pressed for time and you want to rush a check, you would just submit your normal paperwork. So if it's a reimbursement, You'll have your reimbursement voucher with the paperwork, receipts attached, and then a separate rush voucher marked as a transfer, signed by your advisor, paying SOFO. So like I said, a next day rush is $15, and that means we'll have it ready for you in 24 hours. So, you know, really be aware of that. If you're turning it in at 8 in the morning, or we're not open at 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning on Thursday, you know, 24 hours means we'll have it ready 9 a.m. on Friday. If you don't turn it in until the end of the day on Thursday, 24 hours will be the end of the day on Friday. So it's a 24-hour rush. $20 will get you a same-day rush, which means we'll have it ready for you by 4 o'clock that day, so right when we close. But you do have to get it in by 1 o'clock on an even day. So 3 hours is about the least amount of time we can possibly use to make a check. So that's totally an option. So yeah, if you're really pressed for time for any reason, I would say definitely, you know, take advantage of those rush checks, and just remember to always bring a separate voucher marked as transfer, signed by your advisor, to pay for the rush fee. Okay, cool. That is all that I have for you guys, but I will stick around until 8 o'clock, so feel free to ask questions about anything at all, anything related to transactions or completely unrelated, and I will do my best to help you out. Okay, great. I'll be here.